Good morning, folks. Sorry for any mix-up, but we are live on YouTube, not on Facebook, evidently. But anyways, we're glad you're here. Happy Sunday morning, and thank you for joining us in worship as we stay together, even though we can't be together. So here we go.
Searched me and you know me. You're familiar with all my ways. You have placed your hand upon me. Such knowledge I can't attain. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I make my bed in the depths, if I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, searched me and you know me. You have searched me and you know me. You're familiar with all my ways. You have placed your hand upon me. Such a knowledge I can't attain. Can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I make my bed in the depths, if I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will hold me fast. Even there your hand will guide me. Yeah, you are there. I will sing a new song, 'cause you love me. I will sing a new song, 'cause you're there. I will sing a new song, 'cause you love me. I will sing a new song, yeah, because you're there. 'cause you're there. And if I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will hold me fast. Even there your hand will guide me, 'cause you are there. You are there. You are there. From my dying, from my shame, you heard my groaning, you called my name. From the darkness, from the grave, oh, I cried out to you, and you came to save me. Oh, you saved me. I will dwell in the shadow of your mercy. I will walk in the land of those who live. I raise up the cup of your salvation. You turn my soul to rest. You turn my soul to rest. Kindness, in your grace, by such mercy you have saved. For your glory, for your name, for your kingdom, you came to save me. Oh, you saved me. I will dwell in the shadow of your mercy. I will walk in the land of those who live. I raise up the cup of your salvation. You turn my soul to rest. You turn my soul to rest. You, Lord, for you alone can hear my cry, can hear my cry. You hear my voice, and only you can give me life, can give me
guys for joining us today. We can't wait to have you back in this room. But I have a question for you for the day to ask everybody that you're with and those that you're connected with. What is a story that changed the way you see the world? What is a story that changed the way you see the world? So go in peace. Let's get Esha. I can't wait to hear Esha. That's the deal.
Hi, my name's Patrick, and I'll be reading today's parable, the parable of the sower, Matthew chapter 13, verses 1 through 23. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the sea. Such great crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat there while the whole crowd stood on the beach. And he told them many things in parables, saying, "Listen, a sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seeds fell on the path, and the birds came up and ate them up. Other seeds fell on rocky ground, where they did not have much soil, and they sprang up quickly, since they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched. And since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell on good soil and brought forth grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. Let anyone with ears listen." Now we skip ahead to Jesus' explanation, verse 18. "Hear then the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what is sown in the heart. This is what was sown on the path. As for what was sown on rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet such a person has no root, but endures only for a while, and when trouble or persecution arises on account of the word, that person immediately falls away. As for what was sown among thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but the cares of the world and the lure of wealth choke the word, and it yields nothing. But as for what was sown on good soil, this is the one who hears the word and understands it, who indeed bears fruit and yields, in one case 100-fold, in another 60, and in another 30. Thank you.
Hey everyone. As Jason said last week, this summer we're looking at the parables, these subversive and radical teachings from Jesus. Parables are stories that upset the status quo, but since most of human history has been built around maintaining the status quo, we shouldn't be surprised that we may have missed some things the parables have to teach us, that these teachings might be different from the versions we've been taught in historical Christianity, or what I might call Christianity of empire or colonizing Christianity. I'll explain more about what I mean by that in a minute, but first I want to introduce myself and explain a little bit about the lens I bring to all of this. So my name is Esha. I've been going to ANC for a couple years, and I'm a member of the Preaching Guild here. I'm Indian American and a descendant of a people who were subjected to colonialism and imperialism for hundreds of years. A descendant of people who were Christians before colonialism and some who became Christians after colonialism. I grew up hearing stories from different family members about the history of Christianity in India. I grew up hearing about how St. Thomas came to South India and told some of our ancestors about Jesus, and they became followers from that time forward. I also grew up hearing stories about two of my great-grandfathers, one who was a pastor in North India and the other a pastor in South India, about their call to ministry, their love for God, and the work they did. And though I've inherited their faith, I was born here and raised in American Christianity in majority white spaces, which of course complicates all of this even more. So I think often about the question, what is the faith I've inherited? This blend of Indian Christianity before colonialism, Indian Christianity after colonialism, American majority white Christianity, where did it all come from? Who's influenced it? And what does that mean for my faith today? I want to go over part of the parable of the sower we just heard and take a closer look at the seeds that were sown among the thorns. So going back to Matthew 13, in verse 3, and he told them many things in parables, saying, listen, a sower went out to sow. And as he sowed, some seeds fell on the path, and the birds came and ate them up. Other seeds fell on rocky ground, where they did not have much soil, and they sprang up quickly, since they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched, and since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell on good soil and brought forth grain, some 100-fold, some 60, and some 30. Let anyone with ears listen. Later, Jesus explains the parable to the disciples, saying, as for what was sown among thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but the cares of the world and the lure of wealth choke the word, and it yields nothing. But as for what was sown on good soil, this is the one who hears the word and understands it, who indeed bears fruit and yields in one case 100-fold, in another 60, and in another 30. The thorns choked the seed and prevented it from yielding any fruit. Only the thorns remained. So what happened when the seed Jesus gave to us was sown among thorns? Thorns of power, oppression, the lure of wealth? First, I want to be sure we realize that the thorns always existed, even before the seed was sown. History shows us that those with power have always used their influence to maintain their power, their wealth, and their status. And the methods used to maintain that power caused great harm to many people throughout ancient history. Women, the disabled, children, indigenous inhabitants of various lands, just to name a few. But Jesus gave us a new seed that had the potential to bear fruit and yield 100-fold if it found good soil. He taught us a radical way of living, that grace and love was for all, with a particular emphasis for those on the outside who society had forgotten. Jesus showed us that with his own life as he spent time with and elevated women and children and Samaritans and sex workers. But how quickly the same old thorns choked out this seed. How quickly power corrupted and prevented this seed from bearing the fruit we were promised. Christianity moved very quickly from radical upside-down teaching of the last being first to becoming the official religion of the Roman Empire. How quickly the religion of the oppressed became the religion of the oppressors. And as that happened, the old thorns crept in. The systems that used violence to oppress others, that said Romans were superior to those they conquered, that kept men at the top, now used the name of Jesus and the faith of Christianity to justify those behaviors. It's not hard to see how that continued throughout history. What follows is the establishment of the Holy Roman Empire and the idea that the kings throughout Europe were divinely anointed by God. It's not hard to see that continued as European countries were drawn by the lure of wealth and fought among themselves to gain power, each trying to find more gold, more spices, more land, how each one believed God was on their side, that the words of Jesus supported their desire for more power and wealth, how God approved of them exploring and exploiting the world so they could come out on top. When colonizers went from Europe to other parts of the world, as they set out to conquer and control, what understanding of faith did they bring with them? Jesus' teachings of the last being first? The teachings of radical grace and love available to all? I don't think so. If those teachings had been understood and internalized, if that fruit had really materialized, they would not have been colonizing and oppressing other human beings made in the image of God. When Portuguese colonizers first came to India, they encountered Christian communities that had been around for more than 1,000 years. But the colonizers considered them to be heretics because they did not submit to Rome. And so the Goa Inquisition, a violent period of forced conversions, began. Instead of the fruit yielding 100-fold, the thorns multiplied and spread. And as my mom reminded me when recently I spoke with her about this parable, thorns cause harm and can leave lasting scars. The vast majority of present-day denominations and expressions of Christianity came to the world through the West, and specifically from Europe. So how could this history not impact our faith today? Just yesterday, we commemorated the official birth of the settler colonial country we all live in. We didn't escape these thorns. We inherited them. We inherited a Christianity that centered the power and supremacy of colonizers from Europe and the inferiority of those they colonized. Of course, theology was created to justify these systems. And of course, that theology permeates the faith today in the way we worship, interpret the text, in the doctrines we've never thought to question. When faced with this reality, I'm tempted to throw the whole thing away, to burn it to the ground and just start over. I've wondered if I'm delusional for thinking that any of this could be for me, or that anything good could remain. I've wondered if the seed is just rotten and it can never bear any fruit. And if that's you, I see you, and I understand the doubt and the frustration and the desire to toss it all away. But though I've tried to do that, something has always drawn me back in. And I think it's a deep hope that the seed is good. That at the core, there's a love that says you and I belong, no matter how many have corrupted this faith to say we do not. In Caitlin Curtis's book, Native, she says, assimilation offers you a trade. Your God-given identity for a chance to be seen, to be comfortable, to fit in with ease. For most of my life, I took that trade. I struggled to blend in and belong in majority white American Christian spaces. Over time, I internalized a colonizing version of Christianity, one that held an underlying assumption that the colonizers had a better or truer understanding of God than those they colonized. I thought that if my beliefs or understanding of God conflicted with the white male preachers I read and listened to, that meant I was in the wrong, that I had to change myself or my convictions to align with the right understanding of scripture or gospel or faith, but I've learned that's not true. That I can trust myself, my understanding of God, and the work of the Spirit in my life, and that some of the teachings that I was told were the teachings of Jesus were really the legacy of colonialism and colonizing Christianity. They were thorns causing harm, not the fruit itself. So I'm still here, ripping out thorns and rebuilding my faith, looking for and hoping for something much better than a faith corrupted by the thorns of power, hoping for a better fruit than what has been offered to us in the past. And I have a lot of hope that there is something truer and deeper for all of us to uncover. I find hope in my ancestors who in the early decades of the church, before colonizers from Portugal or England ever came to our shores, heard about Jesus from someone who had walked alongside him, from Thomas who had doubted, but who came to believe in the way of divine love so deeply that he sought out my ancestors not out of a desire to conquer them, but out of a desire to share true good news, that they were deeply loved and that this love was available to all. I find hope in the pre-colonial expressions of this faith across the globe, but in India and Ethiopia specifically. Proof that we don't have to accept a Eurocentric Christianity as the only understanding or interpretation of this faith. I find hope in my ancestors who wrote hymns and worship in our languages, including Tamil hymns that are still sung today. I find hope when I realize that Jesus was a person with brown skin, living in a land under imperial rule. To quote Lisa Sharon Harper, he was a brown man whose social location was at the bottom of empire's human hierarchy. He was an oppressed, colonized man from an oppressed and colonized people. I sometimes wonder if my ancestors ever identified with that or found comfort in it. The seed has always been available to us, and its fruit is our birthright. We never needed colonizers to travel around the world to bring it to us. The seed was given to us by the sower, and it was scattered everywhere, on the path, on rocky ground, on the thorns, available to all. But for this seed to bear fruit, we must create conditions for good soil. We must dig deep and unravel the corruption that results from power, the thorns that have overtaken the promise of the good seed. Whether they take the shape of colonialism or imperialism, white supremacy or patriarchy, once we face that corruption and dismantle it from the faith we've inherited, once we clear and uproot these thorns, maybe then we can create conditions for good soil. But to uproot these thorns, we have to make it safe for people to name them, create conditions so that no one feels like they have to assimilate. a space where people can feel free to share their experiences without fearing loss of their church community or rejection. What if we really listened when people told us how the thorns harmed them? What if we responded with care and tenderness and love? Instead of pushing them out, what if we pulled them further in, joining together in the work of uprooting the thorns that have caused so much harm? There are many authors, writers, artists, and scholars who are doing this work and showing us the way forward, showing us how we can recognize colonizing thought in this faith and in the church, how we can root out colonizing Eurocentric theology from our minds and our hearts, so that we can create the conditions for this seed to bear fruit. I'm thinking specifically of scholars like Lisa Sharon Harper, who recently did a webinar series on how to decolonize the Bible. I'm thinking about Caitlin Curtis, an Indigenous writer who explores her identity and understanding of herself and God in her book Native. Joe Lumen, a Colombian theologian and pastor who's doing deep theological work on different public platforms, including Instagram, every single day. Jamar Tisby, who looks at the American church's complicity in racism in his book, The Color of Compromise. And in general, I'd encourage everyone to pick up more books or explore more theology that comes outside of a white European narrative. Womanist theology, liberation theology, black theology, or as I might call it, theology. Isn't it interesting that we don't call Luther or Calvin or theology from any European person white theology or European theology? We usually just call that theology. White or European theology has been so normalized in Christianity that it's treated like the default. But it doesn't have to be that way. In fact, it shouldn't be that way. Theology that was formed in circles of power cannot be the full truth or the only way to understand God. I fully believe that the radical way of love Jesus talked about is worth following, that the seed that was offered to us by the sower is good, and it has the potential to bear good fruit, that the love of God is for me and for you, and it calls us into more of ourselves, that it doesn't require me to leave my culture or my people or my God-given identity behind. It doesn't require that I adopt a white Eurocentric belief system, the belief system of colonizers, or submit to those teachings or doctrine. No. The love of Jesus teaches us something different, how to decenter power and center those who Jesus always prioritized throughout his life, those who were harmed, isolated, or not valued by the society of his time. To quote Richard Rohr, think of Christianity as a giant act of solidarity with the marginalized and all of creation. What would it look like to experience that kind of faith? Something that frees us and allows us to experience true solidarity with one another and all of creation. Something that allows us to be more understanding and loving of our own God-given identity and the God-given identity of others. What if we get to trust ourselves? Trust our understanding of God and the work of the Spirit in our lives? What if we could share that with one another without fear, but with grace and respect for each other? Supporting and empowering one another in the sacred work of discovering more about ourselves and about God. Could that be a true individual and collective liberation? A true peace? There might be a lot of work to do to get to that. Clearing and uprooting deep-set thorns is not easy work. It's not something we can do overnight. It might shift the ground we thought was solid and comfortable, and at times it might be painful. But as we do the work together, we can hold on to the hope that the sower is good, that the seed offered to us is good, and that the fruit we've been promised is well worth the work.
God, we know that progress and fruit take hard work. May we be people of hard work. Lord, first, may we recognize that our garden needs a hell of a lot of tending. May may we get in there and sweat, get our hands dirty, and pull the weeds, pull the thorns, even if we get scraped and cut. Lord, give us the strength to keep pushing forward and to till the soil, and to fertilize. May we be a people who are ready to take these seeds and let them grow. May your fruit, the fruit of the Spirit, be so evident and so abundant among us. But first and foremost, may we not be afraid of the work.
I will not be afraid. I will not fear. No, I will not fear. And I will not be afraid. I will not fear. I will not fear. For you, oh Lord, are a shield about me. You are my glory. You lift my head. You lift my head. And you, oh Lord, are a shield about me. You are my glory. You lift my head. You lift my head. You lift my head. And I will not be afraid. I will not fear. No, I will not fear. And I will not be afraid. I will not fear. No, I will not fear. For you, oh Lord, are a shield about me. You are my glory. You lift my head. You lift my head. And you, oh Lord, are a shield about me. You are my glory. You lift my head. You lift my head. Oh. You lift my head, Lord. Oh, you lift my head. You lift my head. I cried aloud to you, oh God, and you answered me. I cried aloud to you, oh God, and you answered me. I cried aloud to you, oh God, and you answered me. Oh, you answered me. Oh, you answered me. I cried aloud to you, oh God, and you answered me. my glory. Yeah. You lift my head, you lift my head, and you, oh Lord, are a shield about me. You are my glory. You lift my head, 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 you lift my head. Oh, you lift my head, you lift my head.
Well, I feel warm wind blowing, melting all the sadness off of my soul, and I smell sweet cherry blossoms, pouring all that gladness into my soul. In winter, I believe you. In springtime, I see you. It's so good to be with you. My hope has come. Lord, you make all things new. Your love is my breakthrough. Now I sing hallelujah. My hope has come. Now I walk through the valley of the shadow. I have been tested like silver and gold. Lord, your faith has taught me to cherish that this light affliction is not my home. In winter, I believe you. In springtime, I see you. It's so good to be with you. My hope has come. Lord, you make all things new. Your love is my breakthrough. Now I sing hallelujah. My hope has come. Now I'm not gonna give up to this mortal frustration, and I'm not gonna give death any standing ovation. I will lift my soul up, God, with no hesitation, 'cause between you and me there's no separation. Winter, I believe you. In springtime, I see you. It's so good to be with you. My hope has come. Lord, you make all things new. Your love is my breakthrough. Now I sing hallelujah. My hope has come. In winter, I believe you. In springtime, I see you. It's so good to be with you. My hope has come. Lord, you make all things new. Your love is my breakthrough. Now I sing hallelujah. My hope has come. Now I sing hallelujah. My hope has come. Now I sing hallelujah. My hope has come.
Right. Wait, that's not even funny in Austin. All right. It's not bad for a couple of white guys back there. Oh, y'all, what a great time to have you again. We apologize for the technology gap. It went to YouTube. We'll get it worked out. We're serious around here, and as I listened to Esha speak this morning, it occurred to me exactly how serious we are. And I just want to acknowledge that for some of you, that may have been a challenging word. She may have been asking you to rethink the entire history you inherited, and if that's your sense of what Esha just said, then you heard her, and that was with great intention. So you know us to be a little house that takes these conversations very seriously, and I would venture to say that that's why some of you continue to be in this audience. We're not going to put a bow on what's going on. We're going to ask you to do some deep reflection. In fact, you know this, the last couple of summers in a row, we've actually upped the ante over the summer and asked you to do some extra deep thinking. And so we set that foundation with a vision of what peace can look like, with a possibility, maybe the perhaps factor of maybe we haven't heard him fully yet. And then we bring you words like this, which are going to require you to do some work. So how do Esha and I do that work? How does Sam and I do that? How do we do that work on the Preaching Guild? We don't make this stuff up as we go. So I just want to name a few things. We can skip the prayer for the Eucharist because you guys know all bread is holy at this point. All my Catholic friends go, oh, I'm just telling you, all bread is holy. Sustain your body to get out in the sun and mow your grass in Austin because the grass is long again. We're going to talk about a couple of different things, and we'll end with a benediction and send you on your way. We don't pull these ideas from nowhere. We've been reading deeply. We caught Esha just in between jobs this summer where she had a couple of weeks where she could dig down and focus, and she brought back some stuff that challenged me. We built a list together. I went and got some stuff. She went and got some stuff. Sam's reading some stuff. We're all reading some. I want to point out a couple of things that might be helpful to you. Now, my understanding is that these will be on the, tell us about that.
Yes, we will share these resources and the ones that Esha mentioned as well on Facebook and on Instagram, so you can find them there.
Right, so you can get everything delivered. I know firsthand that Amazon has not been COVID affected. They come to your door every day. They come to mine every day, and they wake up the dogs. So a couple of things that you might lean in. This is probably by far the most progressively forward-moving, deconstructive work around colonialism that I've ever read, and it's by a non-white author. His name is De La Torre. I highly recommend this. Follow this link. You've been hearing me talk about Diarmuid O'Murchú all summer. This was the first book that I read on post-colonial theory. This is where it started for me about a month and a half ago. Dig into these works. Here's why. These are all actually by Diarmuid. If you're watching, Diarmuid, we love you. I grew up in a missionary family. I'm going to be honest with you, and I know there's a lot of missionary kids in our church. We collect them for whatever reason. I know what it was like to carry the gospel across cultures. So when Esha and I sit and think this through, I feel a deep, just like being a straight white male is deeply implicated in the patriarchy that we inherit, I feel a special implication in this business of taking the gospel across cultures. I think I realized a long time ago, and I don't know if this will make me your friend or your enemy, but I realized that so much, if not the majority of what I carried across those cultures, being Latin America and the States, was not helpful. It was very, very much the product of power and very focused on creating new markets, even if they're just for religious products. This was market expansion. This continues to feel like the conquest of 5 centuries ago. So I know what we're asking you to think through is a new story, your story, a new way of understanding these things. And I want you to feel the grace and permission as you read into these conversations to tread lightly, gather what you can of value, but ask some bold questions. Ask some bold questions. We want to constantly drop the message here in this space that makes you take the next step as soon as you are benedicted back out into your world. I want you to be thinking about what new possibilities do you have now? How now can you think about a faith? It came from somewhere. How now can you reread your own story? This is what we're doing in America right now. We're rereading a truer story of our own history. That was what the 4th of July represented for me yesterday. If what I have inherited to a large degree was a product designed to keep me in the dark about how we got here, then I want to do some rereading. And so, all that to say, what are the new possibilities of faith now? I think some of them that come to my mind, and I don't pretend to have the answers, some of them are the noble witness of God that pre-exists any of us when we travel. What could we look like? What could we do now if our work in the world was to weave together that broad, wide witness that is post-national, post-cultural, post-specific. It's there because people are there. I think Esha said that beautifully. Now what can our faith look like? Now what can we do in the world? Now how might we move among people of different languages, cultures, different histories? I think it's a summer of potential, and I'm excited. I'm excited. So.
Absolutely. So we will share those resources on social media, and we'll also share some questions that Esha came up with that might prompt discussion either in your home, or we encourage you to connect on any of our ANC Facebook groups, grab someone else, and start to work through these questions this week. A couple of them are, what is your experience with colonialism? We all have one. We've all lived in a settler colonial state. So what has your experience been? And can you think of any ways colonialism or colonizing theology has influenced the way that you've been taught about Christianity? We've got a couple more questions, so we'll share those online as well. And I'll just close with our benediction. Our poet is on vacation this week, so I did my best. To the church without the harvest you hoped for, you missed the beginning when the sower sowed all over. Ever the protagonist, you made good news your secret, the password your tongue, and now you play telephone at the altar, making photocopies of a forgery, searching for truth, or at least something green. Sometimes thorns are extensions of roots. When you find yourself tugging on more than you can see, pull harder. Love will hold, and somehow already has. Be blessed.